Chapter 21. In the end, the entire medical center was reduced to ashes. They always had a hunch that someone had set the fire on purpose. Jeff said, "If I find out that the fire was intentionally set to make your life difficult at the Murphy family, I won't let them off easily." After chatting for a while, Arabella saw that it was almost time, and Kelly should be arriving at the agreed place soon. So she went downstairs and said, "Mom, I'm going out for a bit." Louisa wanted to ask where her daughter was going, who she was meeting, and what she was doing, but she didn't want to disturb her, so she just smiled and asked, "Should I have Aiden drive you?" "Mom," Serena couldn't help but speak up, "I just told Aiden that I'm going somewhere, meeting a friend later." Louisa furrowed her brow. "Can Pete drive you then?" "Pete has a habit of taking a nap around this time. If I wake him up now, I'm afraid he won't be in a good mental state, and it won't be safe for him to drive," Serena said and then pretended to understand as she glanced at Arabella. "Bella, if you have something urgent, I can call my friend and cancel, and then Aiden can accompany you." "No need, I can drive." But the Rolls-Royce had already been damaged in a collision with a truck and had been sent for repairs. Arabella thought for a moment and asked, "Are there any other cars at home?" Louisa replied, "Of course we have other cars. Let the driver take you to the garage, and you can choose whichever car you like to drive." "Just pick one?" Arabella was also surprised. Louisa lightly pressed the intercom on the wall and directly connected to the driver. "Aiden, come here and take Bella to the garage." The garage had 3 floors. There were various supercars, limited edition sedans, luxury RVs, all in different colors. "What does our family do?" Arabella was shocked by the luxury cars in front of her and finally asked. "Miss Arabella, don't you know?" The driver was also surprised. He thought everyone would recognize Kenneth when they saw him, since he was the wealthiest man in the country. After all, who wouldn't know the richest person in the country? The master has been the wealthiest man in the country, ranked first on the national rich list for 12 consecutive years. Since the master retired last year and the young master took over the group, he has become the wealthiest man in the country. Regardless of who the richest person is, they are all part of the Collins family. Arabella understood. Previously, Atlee and Olga had said that her parents were unemployed. So, they were unemployed for this reason. After a while, a flashy sports car left the Collins residence and drove onto the main street. To avoid attracting attention, Arabella parked the Bugatti Veyron in a nearby underground garage where Kelly had been waiting for quite some time. When Arabella stepped out of the car, Kelly's eyes nearly popped out. She stared at Arabella's luxury car for several seconds. Then asked incredulously, "This is your family's car?" Although Kelly knew Arabella lived in the Reflections Villa in Summerfield, this kind of expensive car wasn't something an average rich person could own. Kelly seemed to be greatly shocked. "Which family is your biological father from?" "The Collins family." "Kenneth Collins?" Kelly's eyes widened in surprise. "You know him?" "Who wouldn't know the country's richest man?" You're damn lucky," Kelly exclaimed. "The Murphys must be regretting it now." In a luxurious private mansion in the suburbs, the lights were dazzling. The mansion had 32 entrances. If viewed from the sky, it looked like a child's drawing of the sun. Each car would enter a different entrance, then into a different garage. After parking, they would take a dedicated elevator to their prepared private rooms. Throughout this process, they wouldn't see other guests, and even after finishing, they wouldn't meet other guests on the road. Because of the high degree of privacy and security here, the entry tickets were always in high demand. Kelly was the Piper family's beloved little princess, so naturally, she could get these tickets. She and Arabella were regulars here. After parking, they took the elevator to the 3rd private room, which was fully equipped with drinks and snacks. This was Serena's first time in such a place. If not for her good friend leading the way, she might not know how vast the world outside was, and that this gorgeous private mansion was actually an underground auction house. "Brooklyn, how did you know about this place?" Serena had told her bestie Brooklyn Reed at noon that she didn't know what gift to give to the sick. Philip, so Brooklyn suggested they come here to look. I've been here a few times with my brother. There are all kinds of rare and precious things here. Just wait and see what Philip likes, buy it and give it to him, he'll definitely be very happy. Brooklyn was also a rich second gen. She figured that Philip had seen all kinds of common treasures, but the ones that appeared at the auction were definitely not available on the market. Why don't I see any other guests? Serena was puzzled. They're all in the other private rooms. The hall has 32 rooms in total, and they form a circle with the stage in the middle. But there's no MC on the stage, all the auctions are automated. Do you know that each room has a large glass wall? That's for a better view of the auction items. You can clearly see outside, but you can't see inside when you're outside. Listening to her bestie's endless chatter, Serena couldn't help but feel a bit envious. If her 5 brothers had been willing to take her here before, she could have seen so much more. Inside private room number 1, Carl stood next to Romeo and respectfully said, "Mr. McMillian, the Hardy's herb will appear as the finale of the auction." The man sitting on the sofa spoke in a low voice, exuding an air of nobility. Heard that Hardy's herb works wonders for heart diseases. He was hoping to snag it at the auction, then hand it over to the medical experts around him for further study. The auction has started. The floor in the center of the stage slowly parted, and an item for auction slowly rose. An automated voiceover began to introduce the source and value of the auction item. A huge electronic screen magnified the shape of the auction item, every detail, every part, could be seen clearly. This was a small bottle of Heart Revive, reportedly, for heart disease patients. It gives a refreshing and comfortable feeling after taking it. When you're fine, you can use it to brew soup. If a patient falls ill, it can also be dissolved in water and taken, providing quick pain relief. It won't cause any side effects when mixed with any other medicine. During the system's explanation, the Heart Revive moved along the ground track, in front of the electronic screen of each box, letting people see it clearly. "Bella, isn't this the leftover material from your Hardy's production?" "Yeah." Arabella did not hide it, honestly saying, "This is making full use of resources. Although its effect is not as good as Hardy's, at least it has some medicinal value, so no waste here." Starting price, 20 grand. Chapter 22. Kelly was taken aback by the price. Even the leftover stuff costs 20 grand? There were 3 buttons in front of the glass wall, labeled 10 grand, 50 grand, and 100 grand, respectively. In other words, the minimum bid increase was 10 grand. Serena stood in front of the glass wall, watching as the amount on the screens in the other boxes lit up blue. After several rounds of bidding, the price had already risen to 120 grand. "Serena, this thing's pretty cool. You could buy it and make some soup for Philip. It'll be good for his health, and he'll know you're a good girl. He'll definitely appreciate it." Serena also wanted to get her hands on this treasure, but the competition from the other buyers was too fierce. She had pressed the 10 grand button several times without success, so she decided to take a risk and press the 100 grand button. The room fell silent. Bidding at 250 grand for the first time. Bidding at 250 grand for the second time. Bidding at 250 grand for the third time. Sold. Congratulations to buyer number 19 on winning a bottle of Heart Revive. Kelly couldn't believe that even the leftovers could sell for such a high price. "Bella, can I have the leftovers next time?" Arabella just smiled at her. "If I gave them to you, would you know what to do with them?" "Hee, you could help me use them." Serena finally managed to win the auction item, hugging her best friend in excitement. The next few items were all decorations, which she wasn't interested in. She left early to go home and make soup. By the time the main event came around, it was 2 hours later. Mr. McMillian, the Hardy's herb is up. 6 fresh green plants rose from the stage, nourished by a special solution. They were extremely valuable. Starting price, 100 grand. Carl knew that Mr. McMillian had to have this little thing, so he went ahead and bid an extra 100 grand. The amount of the bid from box number 1 shocked everyone in the other boxes. 100 grand. This guy just bid an extra 100 grand. He clearly intended to win this. The other boxes weren't about to be outdone. 250 grand. 300 grand. 350 grand. 400 grand. Kelly watched the bidding war unfold. Bella, how much should we bid? Out another 100 grand. Kelly pressed the bid button, and the total immediately jumped to 500 grand. The room was abuzz. The price of 500 grand wasn't for 6 Hardee's herbs, it was for 1. The total for 6 would be 3 million. The others didn't dare to bid any more, and just as Kelly and Arabella thought they had won, a large blue number appeared on the screen in box number 1, 600 grand. The sight of this number sent shockwaves through the room. Arabella and Kelly hadn't expected box number 1 to increase their bid by so much. Box number 3 wasn't about to be outdone, 700 grand. Box number 1 casually matched it, 800 grand. Box number 3 was furious, 900 grand. Box number 1 was as cool as ever, a million. The room fell silent, everyone watching the bidding war between these two. Box number 2 in the middle was feeling very awkward. How did they end up sandwiched between these two big shots? Box number 2 in the middle was feeling very awkward. How did they end up sandwiched between these two big shots? This sucks. Bella, we can't bid any higher. The pills made from Hardee's herb are valuable, but they're only worth $1 million. Kelly said nervously, watching box number 1. The people who came today are not simple. We need to be careful. Hardee's herb can save Granny Grace's life. Arabella raised her bid by another 100 grand. Today, I must get it. Bella. Box number 3 bids 1,100,000 grand. The room was stunned. No one had expected that a single Hardee's herb could go for such a sky-high price of 1,100,000 grand. Who exactly was in box number 3? They were so rich? Mr. McMillian, Carl hadn't expected the bidding to be so fierce. Should we continue? This price has already exceeded the value of the medicine itself. Continue. Romeo's voice was cool and calm. Keep the gap. Yes, sir. Carl increased the bid by 300 grand. Box number 1 bids 1,400,000 grand. As the automated voice announced the bid, Kelly was infuriated. This is ridiculous. What the hell? It's just a few herbs. Do they really have to outbid us so fiercely? Who the hell is in box number 1? They're so rich. 1,400,000 grand per herb, that's 8,400,000 grand for 6. This was not a price ordinary people could afford. Material, copyright, noveldrama.org. Box number 3 bids 1,500,000 grand. Arabella pressed the bid button again. Kelly looked at her slender, beautiful hand and asked in surprise, Bella, are you going to keep bidding? The total was already at 9 million. Even if they made 6 Hardee's pills and sold them, they could only break even at 6 million, and they would still lose 3 million. Just then, Romeo's phone rang. It was Brody, who was looking after his grandfather. Mr. Romeo, something's wrong. After Philip had the soup that Miss Serena brought, he suddenly developed a high fever. The doctors say his condition has worsened, and he's currently being resuscitated. I'm sorry to bother you, but could you come over? Romeo's voice was icy. What did she give my grandfather to drink? She said it was a kind of tonic that's good for the heart when added to soup. And you just sat there and let it happen? I had no choice. Philip was very happy to see her and wouldn't listen to me. He insisted on having it all. Romeo stood up and left the box. Mr. McMillian, aren't we going to keep bidding? Carl sensed the aura of displeasure emanating from him. Did something happen to Philip? Romeo's voice was cold. He's being resuscitated after drinking the soup Serena made. Huh? When did Miss Serena learn to make soup? And she went to see Philip? Carl followed Romeo. Should we ask Miss Arabella to come over and take a look? Romeo suddenly stopped in his tracks, remembering the girl with the scalpel, her clear, confident eyes. Last time it was Miss Arabella who helped Philip get back on his feet. Mr. McMillian, you have Miss Arabella's contact, right? Why don't you give her a call? Romeo gave him a glance, then whipped out his phone. Bidding starts at 1.5 million. Kelly held her breath in tension, her hands clasped together in desperate prayer. Don't bid again, don't bid again. Bidding at 1.5 million for the second time. Arabella's gaze landed on the big glass wall of booth number 1. They didn't seem to be bidding. Bidding at 1.5 million for the third time. Sold. Yay. Kelly immediately hugged Arabella in excitement. We won. We won. They couldn't believe that the person in booth number 1 didn't dare to bid any higher. Congratulations to the guest in booth number 3 for winning 6 Hardy's herb plants. Chapter 23. Arabella held her phone close to her ear, catching the deep, magnetic voice of the man on the other end. My grandpa's run into a bit of trouble. I need your help. Arabella was puzzled. Philip seemed to be doing fine the day before. What could have gone wrong? Where are you right now? Romeo's voice was as low and captivating as a cello. I'll come to pick you up. Could you head to the Holy Cross Church in the suburbs then? The Holy Cross Church was not far from the mansion, and Arabella could reach in a few minutes if she took the shortcuts. Romeo was taken aback. Are you in the suburbs? The Holy Cross Church was an old building left from the 80s, with no worshippers visiting the weed-infested place. What could a girl like her be doing there? After hanging up, Arabella told Kelly, I need to make a trip to the Holy Cross Church, got some business to handle. All right. Kelly knew Arabella had a lot on her plate and didn't ask further. I'll send your stuff over later. There was a whole workflow to be done after the shoot, and Arabella, pressed for time, simply nodded. Okay. At the entrance of the Holy Cross Church. Romeo's mind wandered. Is Miss Arabella here for a photo shoot? She's incredibly beautiful, and it would be a shame if she isn't. Remaining silent, Romeo fixed his gaze on the distance, awaiting the appearance of a figure. Suddenly, Carl exclaimed, It's Miss Arabella. I knew it. She must be here for a photo shoot. Adorned in a white dress, Arabella looked like a stunning vision against the backdrop of the setting sun, turning the church into a picturesque scene. Her flowing dress and waving hair made her appear like a fairy emerging from a painting. Carl found himself captivated by her beauty. After a moment, he stepped out of the car and courteously opened the door for her, saying, Miss Arabella, please come in. With lively eyes and a radiant aura, Arabella glanced briefly at the man in the back seat before seating herself next to him without any pretense. How is Philip doing? She inquired. Romeo, still mesmerized by Arabella's presence, replied, he had some soup that someone brought, and now he's in surgery. Was it a soup from someone he knows? Yes. Arabella recalled Philip's condition yesterday. Even if he drank soup, it wouldn't warrant surgery. So there must be something wrong with the soup. Miss Arabella, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Carl glanced at the rearview mirror and asked, You're still in school, right? She looked like a little girl. I'm 18. Arabella's tone seemed casual. I just finished my university entrance exams. 18? She was still so young. Carl exclaimed, You're only 18 and already such a skilled doctor. Did your ancestors practice medicine? No. So, you are. Carl didn't finish his sentence when the car suddenly jolted. Arabella lost her balance and fell towards Romeo. Romeo instinctively caught her. Arabella was wearing a sleeveless dress today, and Romeo's hand on her shoulder made her blush slightly. Romeo's expression was a bit unnatural as he touched the girl's soft, delicate skin. The girl's elegant scent filled his nostrils. It was a pleasant aroma. I'm sorry, Mr. McMillian, Miss Arabella, Before Carl could explain, the car jolted a few more times. He had been talking to Miss Arabella and hadn't noticed the bumps in the road. As the car jerked violently, Romeo held the girl in his arms protectively and warned Carl, "Keep your eyes on the road." Chapter 24. Arabella raised her eyes and saw his refined features. Something deep within her seemed to be touched. After the car was driving smoothly, Romeo finally let go of her hand and said, "I'm sorry." "It's okay." Arabella looked away, her face slightly flushed. The first 2 times Romeo had met Arabella, she appeared aloof and arrogant, but now she seemed like a timid little girl, which he found intriguing. Carl thought Romeo might get angry, but he didn't. Carl looked up and noticed the subtle atmosphere in the back seat. Suddenly, he realized something. "Focus on driving." Romeo noticed his gaze and spoke with a slightly stern tone. In the past, any woman who dared to get close to Romeo would undoubtedly be cold-shouldered, or even thrown out of the car. But now, Romeo didn't drive this woman away. Instead, he held her during the bumpy ride. Carl quickly said, "Mr. McMillian, it's because of Philip that I've been distracted." Romeo was puzzled. "Miss Arabella, today Mr. McMillian and I went to see Philip. He said he wanted to meet you and thank you for saving his life. You may not know, but Philip is very stubborn. Once he decides to meet you, he will definitely find you." Carl then turned to Arabella and said, "Mr. McMillian, I'm worried that Philip might disturb Miss Arabella's life. Could we schedule a time for Miss Arabella to meet him and explain the dangers of not taking his medication? Miss Arabella is a doctor, and Philip will surely listen to her. Can we do that, Miss Arabella?" Romeo followed up. "Okay." Arabella nodded, mostly concerned that they might come looking for her and cause trouble. "If he wakes up, I'll go see him directly. If he's still unconscious, we'll arrange another time," Arabella added. "All right." Romeo's gaze lingered on her face, and then he took out his phone and asked, "If we're going to schedule a time, can I add you on WhatsApp?" "Sure." Carl saw them adding each other as WhatsApp friends and couldn't contain his excitement. "When the time comes, you send me your address, and I'll come to pick you up," Romeo said, his tone gentle. "Okay." At the entrance of the operating room at Hope Hospital, Brody paced anxiously, constantly glancing at the operating room. Philip had been in there for an hour, and the surgical light was still on. The elevator door opened, and Romeo and Arabella walked out together. They both had outstanding looks and well-proportioned figures, looking like a perfect match. "Young master," Brody noticed the young girl beside Romeo, feeling somewhat surprised, but he didn't have time to ask too much. "Philip has been in the operating room for an hour." "What did the doctor say?" "It doesn't look good." Brody sounded a bit downcast. He wished he had stopped Philip from drinking. "Bring the soup that person sent over. Let Ms. Bennett have a look." "Okay." Though surprised, Brody quickly brought over the soup. Arabella stirred the remaining soup ingredients with a spoon, realizing it was a famous heart-nourishing soup. "But the soup shouldn't taste like this." Arabella sniffed carefully, indeed catching a familiar scent. Chapter 25. "Is there heart revive in this soup?" Arabella asked Brody, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Brody was taken aback, but quickly replied, "Yes, the person who delivered it said that heart revive is good for the heart and doesn't have any side effects." "You're right." Arabella finally figured out what the problem was, but Philip is weak right now. Having this soup would actually backfire. "So, it's not the soup that's the problem, but Philip's physical condition?" Brody was surprised by Arabella's intelligence. Just through a sniff, she knew where the problem was. Just then, the door to the operating room burst open, and a nurse rushed out. "Mr. McMillian, nice to see you. Please sign this surgery consent form." Romeo looked at the paper and pen in her hand but didn't take them. Instead, he asked coldly, "How's my grandfather?" It's not looking good. Please trust us, we'll do everything we can to save your grandfather. Also, could you please sign this?" Romeo glanced at Arabella. "What do you think? Philip's condition isn't that severe yet." Arabella understood the implication of signing the surgery consent form. She checked the time. "Wait for me." She handed her bag to Romeo, who took it. As Arabella walked away, everyone was stunned. "Master, who is this girl?" Brody was puzzled. Why was Romeo holding her bag? Isn't the operating room this way? Why is Ms. Bennet going that way? Carl was also confused. "Mr. McMillian, your grandfather's condition is very serious. Please make a decision quickly." The nurse was in a hurry, unsure what Arabella was doing and worried about the delay in treatment. Arabella went to Caden's office to get a set of acupuncture supplies, then asked the nurse to lead her to change into sterile clothing. "Mr. McMillian, she..." The nurse was stunned. Was this girl crazy? Was she going to operate on the old man herself? "Just do as she says." Romeo's words were undoubtedly a huge support for Arabella. Whatever she says next, just follow her instructions. The nurse understood and didn't say anything more. She quickly led Arabella away. "Mr. McMillian, let's go to the observation room and wait. At least we can see how far along the surgery is." "All right." Romeo, holding Arabella's bag, walked ahead. In the operating room, Dr. Gregg breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Arabella. He immediately gave her the main position. Ever since he witnessed her medical skills last time, he had been in awe of her. The nurses were stunned. Did this girl have such great abilities? Was this the miraculous young doctor from yesterday's hospital rumors? Was she the one who operated on Philip? If that's the case, it wouldn't be surprising. After all, even the famous heart specialist Dr. Gregg had failed in front of her. Arabella finished the rest of the surgery, but Mr. McMillian's breathing was still very weak. Things didn't look good. "Miss Arabella, what do we do now?" The other doctors were obviously at a loss. They had been practicing medicine for many years and could handle all kinds of conditions with ease. But with Philip's situation, they felt helpless. "Wait." When Arabella said this word with certainty, the other doctors became discontent. "Philip's breathing is getting weaker, and we're supposed to wait." "Wait for what?" "This is the most critical time for rescue. Every second is priceless." Seeing Arabella standing motionless in front of the operating table, the other doctors started to panic. Chapter 26. "If you can't handle it, maybe we should let Dr. Gregg take a crack at it. You're still wet behind the ears, probably haven't dealt with this kind of situation. Dr. Gregg, can you rack your brains for a solution? We can't just sit on our hands here." "If you can't." "Who said I can't?" Arabella lifted her gaze, her eyes brimming with confidence. The speaker was taken aback by her audacity. "If you've got the chops, then step up." Philip's breathing was getting weaker. The sound of the ventilator alarm was becoming more frequent. Upon hearing the alarm, Arabella swiftly opened her needle case. Everyone was stunned. What was she planning to do? Employ some Eastern acupuncture? This is an operating room. Are you seriously going to perform acupuncture here? The patient is in critical condition, he can't handle your messing around. If you don't have any other tricks up your sleeve, then step aside and stop wasting time. Arabella started inserting silver needles into the old man's head, heart, and arm. The nearby nurse was scared out of her wits. This girl had guts, she had stuck needles all over Philip. "Don't peddle your Eastern medicine mumbo-jumbo here." Finally, one doctor couldn't stand it any longer and was about to intervene, when Dr. Gregg scolded him. "Enough." The nurse quickly chimed in. "Mr. McMillian said we're to follow her lead." Under Romeo's orders, the others, though ticked off, didn't dare to object, with only one brave soul saying, "Fine, you handle it." After the needles were inserted into Philip's pressure points, it wasn't long before Philip coughed up some blood. Everyone was dumbstruck. Even Brody in the observation room was startled. "Is Philip okay? He seems to be getting worse." Why did Philip suddenly cough up blood? After coughing up blood, Philip's condition gradually stabilized. The ventilator stopped sounding its alarm. All the doctors were staring at Arabella in shock. Arabella saw that it was about time, began to remove the needles, and casually said, "He's fine now." Let's get him back to his room. All the doctors were looking at her with complex expressions. If you hadn't jumped the gun with your surgery, these few needles would have done the trick. Arabella packed up her needles and walked out after dropping this bombshell. Everyone was blown away, with Dr. Gregg being the first to grasp her meaning. Recalling the process and points where she inserted the needles, he mulled it over and suddenly understood. Brilliant. So that's what it was. He had studied acupuncture and understood Arabella's methods. But the other doctors were in the dark and came to ask, Dr. Gregg, did you get it? Tell us. How did she do that? Mr. McMillian. Miss Arabella, Carl was too shocked to finish his sentence. What kind of person was she? It was a disease that had all the professional doctors stumped, and she healed it with a few needles? Was it that the other doctors were incompetent, or was her skill just too superior? As Arabella stepped out of the operating room, she saw Romeo walking towards her, her bag still slung over his shoulder. Arabella had left in a hurry earlier and had given her bag to him. She hadn't expected him to carry it for so long. Chapter 27. Philip will be awake tomorrow. For the next month, he needs to avoid overeating. So, no more nutritious soup like today's, Arabella said. Got it. Romeo agreed, glancing at the sky. Let me treat you to dinner. No need. I should head home. It was likely around 6 or 7 o'clock now. Arabella took her bag, checked her phone, and sure enough, she had missed 2 calls from her mom. Arabella quickly returned the call. Sorry, Mom, I was busy. Romeo watched the girl on the phone. Her eyes sparkled, she carried an extraordinary aura, and her voice was soft and enchanting when talking to her family. Right, I'm heading home now, okay, bye. After she hung up, Romeo softly said, let me drive you home. Just drop me off at Emerald Park. I have a car parked in the underground garage there. Emerald Park? That was a park still under construction, not yet open to the public. Why was her car parked there? And why was she at the Holy Cross Church later? To him, the girl in front of him was like a mystery, hard to see through. I need to return these first. Arabella had borrowed some acupuncture equipment from Caden's office earlier, and he was on duty today, still in the office. After returning the acupuncture tools, Arabella walked out of the office and passed by Granny Grace's room. She couldn't resist stopping to take a peek inside. Inside the room, Granny Grace was still there, receiving N4 treatment. Her eyes were closed, and she looked peaceful in her sleep. The sight triggered a fond memory from Arabella's younger days. She remembered an afternoon when she had seen Granny Grace napping in a room, bathed in sunlight streaming through the curtains. The old lady's breathing was calm and even, just like it was now.
Suddenly, Arabella heard a voice calling her name, and she turned to find a surprised Olga and Atli standing there. They had received a call from the hospital, alerting them that Granny Grace's VIP room was about to expire, prompting them to rush over after dinner to renew it. Little did they expect to encounter Arabella at the hospital. Olga was the first to regain her composure and wasted no time in questioning Arabella. What are you doing here? Haven't you gone back to your biological parents? You can't seriously be thinking of begging Grace to let you stay in this city or, worse, come live at our house. Forget about it. Atli was equally taken aback by Arabella's presence, asking, Bella, what's going on? Didn't you go back with your family? Olga, with a disgusted expression, jumped to conclusions about Arabella's motives. I bet she never really left. She probably heard about the harsh living conditions at home on her way back and couldn't bear it, so she ran back here to beg Grace for help. Frustrated, Olga urged Atli to intervene, and he reluctantly stepped forward with a forced smile, attempting to resolve the situation. Bella, can we talk? How much money do you want? Arabella observed her once close family members now showing their true colors and couldn't help but feel a sense of amusement, her lips curling slightly. They want to buy her off. Seeing her silent, Atlee took a bank card out of his pocket. Here's $100,000. Take it. The password is 123,456. Atlee. Olga was pained at his generosity. Why are you giving her so much money? Atlee signaled Olga to be quiet. If they didn't give Arabella enough money, how would she agree to leave? She had stolen Yoli's expensive ruby necklace yesterday, and today she was getting a large sum of money. She would leave, right? A hint of mockery flickered in Arabella's beautiful eyes as she looked at the bank card in his hand. She remained silent and didn't react. What, you think it's too little? Olga asked discontentedly. I advise you to be content. Otherwise, you might end up with nothing. Atlee tried to shove the bank card into her hand, but Arabella skillfully avoided it. What do you want? You want to wait for Grace to wake up and deceive her dream on. Olga never thought Arabella would be so difficult. Let me tell you, from now on, you have nothing to do with Grace. Stay away from us. 1 billion. Arabella's lips curled slightly. She said word by word, I might consider it. You must be daydreaming. Olga was so angry she nearly fainted. The girl's first word was 1 billion, why don't you rob a bank? Robbing a bank isn't as fast as robbing you guys. You. Olga clutched her chest, never imagining the girl would be so cunning. I won't give you a penny. She grabbed the bank card back. If you don't leave, I'll have you thrown out. Equals 400.
Oh, then call someone to throw me out. You're killing me. This called VIP floor, letting anyone in. Olga was about to go find staff. Arabella. Suddenly, a man's voice caught their attention. Olga looked up to see a man at the end of the corridor looking this way, apparently calling Arabella's name. It was a tall man with a strong presence, even from this distance. Arabella heard the voice and looked towards it. Seeing Romeo waiting for her, she didn't bother with the two any longer and turned to leave. Who is that man? Olga looked curiously down the hallway. Could he be her father? That impossible, her father's voice couldn't be that young. Maybe he's her brother. She have 5 unmarried brothers. Wasn't it mentioned earlier that her grandmother was sick? He could be staying in this hospital as well. Can they afford to stay here? Olga watched them disappear at the end of the corridor and couldn't help but ask Atlee, we must quickly transfer Grace to another hospital, otherwise, if Arabella gets attached to her, it'll be a big problem. Atlee had the same thought, but within all of Summerfield, no other hospital had medical resources as good as Hope Hospital. Only here could Grace receive the best care. Grace likes her. I'm just afraid Grace will soften her heart and let her come back to this family. Olga recalled 3 months ago when Grace found out Arabella wasn't her biological granddaughter. Her heart couldn't take it and she fainted. Upon waking up, Grace sternly declared that as long as she was alive, Arabella was not allowed to leave this family. Anyone who made Arabella leave would be considered an enemy of Grace. Later, when Yoli returned home, Grace didn't show her any kindness either. Her heart and eyes were only for this unrelated little girl. Chapter 28. In order to protect Yoli and to help Arabella find her home as soon as possible, without Grace Murphy's knowledge, the two of them posted Arabella's information on the family search site. One day, Arabella's family finally called to say they wanted to take her home. When Grace found out, she was so shocked that she had to be hospitalized. During Grace's absence from home, Arabella smoothly left the Murphy family. Grace is probably getting a bit senile in her old age. She treats a stranger better than her own granddaughter. Olga complained, now I'm just worried that if Arabella doesn't leave, she might get some improper ideas, like fighting Yoli over Zachary Panter. The Panter family was much better off than the Murphy family. Zachary was kind and sensible. He treasured Yoli and treated her very well. Not only was Yoli beautiful, But she also had a gentle and kind personality, which was why she could firmly grasp Zachary's heart. "Atlee, shall we go and find our primary doctor, Dr. Caden, and ask him to arrange a transfer procedure for us?" "We have no other choice," Atlee sighed. "Let's go." Arabella followed behind Romeo, phone in hand, replying to messages one by one. She had been to an auction in the afternoon, performed surgery on Philip, and still had a lot of messages that she hadn't replied to in time. Just then, someone pushing a wheelchair came around the corner, nearly bumping into Arabella. Romeo pulled her to his side in one swift motion. "Be careful." Arabella reacted, her face flushing again. In the car, Romeo noticed that Arabella seemed a bit listless. So, he pulled over. "Wait for me a moment." He got out of the car and walked into a dessert shop. Not long after, he came out carrying several bags. Inside were small cakes, bread, milk, juice, and other things, as well as some cute-looking candies. "Girls are supposed to like this stuff," he handed them over. Having performed surgery on his grandpa for so long today, Arabella was probably hungry. As Arabella was about to say something, looking at all the food in front of her, Romeo leaned in and opened a bottle of milk, sticking a straw in it for her. "Arabella, I'm not hungry." "Eat more." Romeo handed her the milk. Arabella took the milk and took a few sips. Even though it was pure milk, she didn't expect it to taste a bit sweet. On the other side. "Dr. Caden, what do you mean the approval was denied?" Olga found Caden Newton, and as soon as she brought up the transfer, Caden's face turned cold. "Grace should stay at Hope Hospital in her condition." "Isn't there a better hospital?" Atlee couldn't help but ask. "Hope Hospital is the best hospital in the country." "We know, everyone can see the medical standards of Hope Hospital, but..." Before Atlee could finish his sentence, Olga stepped in. "Dr. Caden, we have no choice. If we don't transfer my mother, I'm afraid someone will keep disturbing her and affect her recovery." Caden gave her a cold look. Was she talking about Arabella? Ungrateful indeed. Chapter 29. Bella has done so much for the Murphy family, but what have they done for her as children in return? Caden coldly asked. "If you really cared about Grace, you would have come when the nurse called you at 9 a.m. Why did you wait until now?" We had some stuff to deal with. Mainly, Olga had a spa date with some posh ladies and Atlee was off playing golf with some high-ups from his company. By the time evening rolled around, the housemaid had already prepared dinner. Of course, they gotta eat while it's hot. So they only rushed over after finishing their meal. Because there are things to deal with. Do you not care about the life and death of the old lady? Olga and Atlee felt extremely awkward hearing Caden's words. "I can sign the transfer papers, but I need to inform you that the medical resources and doctors at other hospitals are nowhere near as good as Hope Hospital. Once Grace leaves Hope Hospital, I predict she won't last a week. You should prepare yourselves mentally." Upon hearing this, Atlee's expression became serious.
"Dr. Caden, is there any other better solution such as ensuring Grace's health when she leaves the hospital?" "There is." Upon hearing this, Atlee immediately perked up. "Dr. Caden, do tell, I'm all ears. There's a drug on the market that can save Grace's life." "Go on, I'm taking notes." Atlee quickly took out a small notebook, pulled out a pen from his pocket, and uncapped it. "It can only be purchased on the black market. Each pill costs $1 million, and she needs to take it twice a month. Only after 3 months of consecutive use can surgery be performed." After hearing this, Atlee and Olga exchanged glances. $1 million, so that's $6 million in 3 months. Are drugs that expensive nowadays? It's made from very rare medicinal ingredients, so it's particularly scarce. Atlee silently put away his notebook and pen. "In that case, I've decided not to transfer her. We'll have to trouble you more in the future." The reason they wanted to save Grace was firstly because she holds 30% of the company's shares, worth $30 million. But this sky-high price for the drug was clearly not worth it. Secondly, Grace favored Arabella. If she wasn't in her right mind and gave her shares to Arabella, they might make the old lady leave a will giving all her shares to Yoli before she died. That's why they wanted to save the old lady. Arabella had often helped the Murphy family through crises because Grace owned shares in the company. Otherwise, she wouldn't give a damn about Atlee's life and death. But the people of the Murphy family didn't know this. They thought they're all that, able to become the richest family in Tranquil City. Atlee secretly slipped the bank card he had previously given to Arabella into the medical record in front of Cadden. This small move was caught by Cadden, making him despise Atlee even more. "Mr. Murphy, are you trying to get me fired, or even put in jail?" It was important to know that medical staff took advantage of their positions to accept bribes in private, which was a crime of accepting bribes. If the amount was large, they might even go to jail. "Dr. Cadden, you get me wrong." Atlee quickly laughed and cautiously said, "We're not asking you to violate your professional ethics. This is just a small token of our appreciation. We know you've been working hard recently, and this money, you can use it to buy some health supplements. Yeah, Dr. Cadden, just take it. Take it away." Cadden didn't take a second look, his tone was indifferent. "Someone told me, I will naturally work hard, and you don't need to do any more unnecessary things. You can go out now." "Dr. Cadden." Olga wanted to say more, but Atlee quickly took back the card, laughing it off as if nothing had happened. "All right, we'll leave now. If Dr. Cadden needs anything in the future, just let me know anytime." If it weren't for Bella, Cadden would have kicked them out a long time ago. Chapter 30. Dr. Cadden really has a nasty temper. Olga couldn't help but comment as she stepped out of the consulting room. "Look at Zachary, he is a rich boy, but he's so educated. He's a genius doctor who's been spoiled and pampered since he was a kid, so his arrogance is understandable." Speaking of which, Dr. Cadden mentioned that someone asked him to pay special attention to Grace's condition. Must be the Panther family, right? With their extensive connections, the Zachary family were the only ones who could help with Grace's condition. Plus, Zachary and Yoli were engaged. It has to be the Panther family. Who else could it be? We should thank them at some point, but... Feeling a bit downcast with the inability to transfer Grace to another hospital, Atlee could only let her continue her treatment here. "Atlee, is that the direction the girl earlier took?" Suddenly, Olga seemed to think of something. "I remember that the wards over there are quite expensive. Half of this floor was for regular VIPs, and the other half for top-tier VIPs. Grace got to stay in the regular VIP because they brought it up on the Panther family. It was estimated that the Panther family helped them. But the top-tier VIP was a different story. Not everyone with money could afford it. How could that girl afford to stay there? She didn't know anyone important." "Dad? Mom?" Just then, a gentle voice rang out. "Yoli, how did you come?" Turning around, Olga found not only her daughter came, even Zachary came together as well. Zachary's appearance and temperament were very good, and Olga was more and more satisfied. With such a son-in-law, her smile was always on her lips. "Zach, you came too." Upon spotting them, Zachary courteously greeted, "Hello." "Hello." Atlee returned the greeting warmly. "Weren't you two on a date? Why are you here in the hospital?" "We were going to watch a movie, but I heard from our housemaid that the hospital called us, so I thought something happened to Grace, and came to check on her. Zachary still hasn't left after sending me home, still at our door." So, they came together. "Dad, Mom, How's Grandma Yolanda was quite the performer in front of everyone. Despite her disdain for her biased grandma, she knew how to play her part. I think I saw my sister downstairs just now. That familiar figure stepping out of the VIP elevator, but she didn't see clearly. Hearing her mentioned Arabella, Zachary was taken aback. Didn't they say Arabella returned to her biological family? Why was she here? Olga and Atli both had grim expressions. Let's not discuss her right now. Your grandma is fine, the hospital just wanted us to pay some additional fees. Since you're here, why don't you go in and see her? Maybe your care and love can give her some strength. Zachary and Yolanda shared a glance before walking hand in hand into the ward. Grace on the bed was nothing but skin and bones, looking extremely frail. Tears welled up in Yolanda's eyes. I was only gone for 2 days, and Grandma has become so weak. In truth, her 2 days wasn't accurate. It had been quite a while since she last visited. Why does Grandma have to suffer like this? Why can't all the pain be transferred to me? Why? Seeing her tears, Zachary quickly wiped them away. Silly, you've already been through a lot. I'm not afraid, as long as Grandma can recover, I'm willing to bear all the pain for her. Looking at her kind and determined face, Zachary was deeply moved, and his love for her grew even stronger. Chapter 31. If I don't go home, the woman marrying Zachary would be my sister. I'd be seen as the one who wrecked my sister's happiness, and for that, God would deliberately punish my family who I care about. If that's the case, I don't want to be this rich girl anymore. I don't want to marry Zachary either. You're a Murphy, and going back to the Murphy family is your duty. Marrying me was because of our engagement. You haven't done anything wrong. As the night fell, Romeo's car was speeding through the traffic, heading towards Emerald Park. During this time, his phone kept buzzing. He glanced at the caller ID for the first time, then hit the button on the steering wheel, hanging up the call. But the person on the other end of the line didn't seem to give up, calling again and again. Just let me get off at the front, please. Arabella thought her presence was making it difficult for Romeo to take the call, and was about to get out, but heard him explain, it's a nuisance call. The nuisance calls kept buzzing. Finally, to keep Arabella comfortable in the car, Romeo had no choice but to put on his earphones and answer the call. Romeo, you finally picked up my call. Serena on the other end of the line was sobbing hard. I really didn't know that your grandpa would have such a big issue as soon as I left. It wasn't on purpose. I heard that heart revivin' soup has a great effect on treating heart disease. So, I carefully made a pot of soup with heart revive and gave it to him, thought it would help your grandpa, but I didn't expect it to worsen his condition. It's all because of that medicine seller who defrauded me. He sold me the medicine and I didn't check it. I was fooled. If I knew the medicine had issues, I definitely wouldn't have bought it, let alone let your grandpa have it. Romeo, you have to believe me. I consider you as family and your grandpa as my own grandpa. I would never harm him. Are you done? Romeo didn't have the patience to listen to her sobbing. After she finished, he hung up the call. After taking off the earphone, Romeo continued to drive. Noticing from the corner of his eye that Arabella looked a bit awkward, he asked, "What's up?" That person seemed to be crying really hard. I could hear it. While Arabella didn't know why that person was crying, she felt that person seemed really pitiful. That was the person who hurt my grandpa calling to plead. Romeo explained softly. Okay. Arabella saw that they were near Emerald Park and said, "Please drop me off here. It's already dark, I'll drop you off at the garage." No need. Arabella didn't want others to see her car. The license plate was too conspicuous. Next time she'd choose a more low-key car. Are you sure you can manage alone? Romeo saw that the park wasn't completely built yet, and there weren't many streetlights at night, most places were pitch black. Even the road to the garage was very dark. She was a girl. Wouldn't she be scared? Chapter 32. I'm not scared. Arabella clearly didn't care about her surroundings. She'd been through way more hellish situations, too many times to count. She was getting ready to unbuckle her seatbelt. I got it. Romeo moved closer, his aura was downright comforting. At this close distance, Arabella noticed his features were pretty damn attractive, even his skin was ridiculously smooth. Romeo lifted his head, his deep eyes seriously looking at her. Tell me when you get the time. Sure. Romeo got out of the car first to open the door for her. After she got out, he slung her shoulder bag on her and handed her the stuff he'd bought earlier. You can eat this if you get hungry tonight. Arabella was about to refuse, but looking into his eyes, she took the things anyway. However, the next second, her fingers accidentally brushed against Romeo's hand. The soft touch made her heart race. She felt something special. Seeing her take the stuff and turn to leave, Romeo couldn't help but call her softly, Arabella. What? Arabella turned around to hear him say, the girl just now isn't my girlfriend. Arabella was confused. She was asking for help. I don't really know her well. Arabella, okay. Be careful on the road. Romeo's voice was calm. If you're scared, I can be on the phone with you. No need. Watching the girl's figure gradually disappear from his sight, Romeo got back in the car. The image that kept popping up in his mind was her face, both obedient and cold. Arabella had just entered the underground parking lot when she felt her phone buzzing. It was Romeo. Did you find your car? Arabella found it a bit funny. Just found it. Haven't you left yet? I'm waiting to leave with you. No need, I'm going through exit B. Arabella pressed the car's unlock button. Did you hear that I'm about to drive? All right, be careful on the road. After hanging up, Romeo called Carl. Clear up your schedule tonight, I need to pay a visit to the Collins family. When Carl heard this, he immediately became excited. Mr. Macmillan, you are not going to settle scores with Ms. Serena because of today's incident, are you? Ms. Serena should have no malicious intentions. I'm not settling scores. So you, finally understand Philip's good intentions. Want to invite Miss Serena to visit Philip in the hospital tomorrow. Philip would be delighted. Romeo's gaze fell into the distance, his voice low. I need to see Mr. Collins and Mrs. Collins. You finally decided you want to marry the Collins family's daughter. Just as Carl finished speaking, he could sense the displeasure on the other end. He was confused. So this is... What did that mean, breaking off the engagement? Breaking off the engagement? Carl's face turned pale. Mr. Macmillan, you're not joking, are you? Chapter 33. But Romeo's tone didn't sound like he was kidding at all. Carl swallowed nervously. Mr. Macmillan, your betrothal to Serena was arranged by the elders. If you cancel it tonight, it's like embarrassing the Collins family. It'll ruin the long-standing friendship between the Collins and the Macmillan families. That was the real kicker. Romeo was silent, just quietly watching the traffic outside the car window. Mr. Macmillan, I know you don't like Serena. To be honest, I don't like her either, and I find her contrived and hypocritical. Compared to her, I find Ms. Arabella much more likable. But this isn't just about you and Serena, it's about the two big families, the Collins and the Macmillan. Thinking about Philip lying in his sickbed, Carl knew he would flip his lid if he found out. "Mr. Macmillan, could you maybe reconsider?" Carl made a last-ditch effort to persuade him. But Romeo just turned his gaze, saying nonchalantly, "Get the gifts ready, we're going tonight." "Mr. Macmillan." Carl knew once Romeo made up his mind no one could stop him, but he still plucked up the courage to say, "Even if you don't care about the Collins family, regardless of your friendship with David Collins, or Serena, at least think about the old man's feelings. Not only would he lose his great-grandson, relations between the Macmillan and Collins families would fall apart, and he would be called untrustworthy. How could the old man cope with such a blow?" But Romeo didn't change his decision. Carl knew further words were futile, feeling helpless. Mr. Macmillan's engagement wasn't be decided by anyone. If the old man forced his hand, it would backfire. If anyone's to blame, it's Serena. Her behavior today didn't earn Mr. Macmillan's favor, it made him call off the engagement. "Let's not tell my grandpa yet. I'll tell him myself when he's feeling better." Did Mr. Macmillan mean to break the news to Philip after everything was done? But news like calling off an engagement would spread fast. When Philip found out, he must be very angry. They could only hope the news would take its time to spread. Philip's heart couldn't take another shock. Kenneth and Louisa finally waited until Arabella came home. They eagerly sat her down at the dinner table, heaping food onto her plate. Serena, red-eyed from crying over Philip's situation, didn't dare show her face. She lied that she had already eaten and hid in her room. She was afraid of what her parents would think of her if they found out. After dinner, Arabella chatted with her parents a bit before heading upstairs to bathe. Kenneth and Louisa were chatting on the sofa, when suddenly, a servant came in with news. "Sir, ma'am, Mr. Macmillan is here." The reporting servant was a bit panicked, as Romeo was a big name in high society. He was known to be cold-hearted and ruthless. He held sway over all darkness and light, and not just him, all servants would cower in his presence. Kenneth and Louisa exchanged wordless glances. Romeo, why was he here? Could it be? Did he know Bella was back? It hit the fan. "Quick, show him in." Kenneth was a bit flustered, exchanging a glance with Louisa. What were they going to do? Eric didn't dare delay and personally led him in. Soon, Romeo and his entourage entered the room. Dashing and sharp-eyed, his well-tailored suit fit his status. His presence was like a king ruling the world, radiating a powerful aura the moment he appeared. Chapter 34. Following behind him, a couple of his underlings were clutching onto a bunch of pricey gifts, which they put down before heading out to wait by the door. Left alone now, Carl stood by Romeo, acting all respectful and stuff. "Hello, long time no see." Romeo had a cold personality and didn't talk much. Even his greeting was steady and rigorous. "Romeo, what brings you here today?" Louisa was the first to react. Looking at the gifts he brought, she put on a warm smile. "It's great you came. Thank you for your gifts." "Romeo, come take a seat. Someone, get him a cup of coffee." Kenneth called out in a friendly tone, "You haven't visited us since your bro left the country. Let us catch up tonight." "Romeo, have you eaten yet?" "I have." Romeo replied, still as polite as ever. "It's been a while, but you seem even more mature and steady." Louisa looked at him, finding Romeo very likable. Tall, handsome, competent, he was basically flawless. On the second floor, Serena had planned to chat with her parents after Arabella had gone up to her room. That way, she could strengthen family ties and indirectly find out if they knew about Philip's situation. Just as she opened the door, she overheard two maids discussing about Romeo's appearance. After carefully asking them, she found out Romeo had come to her house. Her legs turned to jelly, and she was so frightened that she almost couldn't stand still. "Miss Serena." Martha went up to help her in a hurry. "Are you all right?" "Martha." Serena grabbed Martha's hand, her voice full of panic. "Romeo's here, in the living room. He must have come because of what happened today. If my parents find out about how I almost got his grandpa killed, what should I do?" "Don't freak out, let us see what he says first." "No, there's a difference between him spilling the beans and me coming clean." Serena quickly weighed her options and blurted out, "I'm going downstairs to apologize to him." "Miss Serena, don't do anything rash." Martha tried to hold her back. "Keep your cool, let us see what's happening downstairs first, you listen to me." Kenneth and Louisa exchanged a glance. "Miss Collins, could they be referring to Bella?" Romeo was well informed. Could he already know that the Collins' real daughter was someone else and Serena was just an adopted daughter? It seemed like he had something to say. Louisa spoke first. "Romeo, this whole thing happened out of the blue, we didn't get a chance to tell you, this story dates back quite a while." Romeo thought she was referring to the previous engagement. He nodded, patiently waiting for her to continue. Louisa recounted in detail about the hospital fire, then said, "We only recently found Arabella, and haven't yet announced her identity to the public. Arabella's grandparents still don't know about this. We didn't mean to keep you or the Macmillan family in the dark." Romeo was shocked. Carl was shocked, too. Louisa knew that at this stage, it was impossible to keep things a secret, so she said, "Edith, go ask Arabella down." Carl looked at Mrs. Collins, then at Romeo. "What's going on?" Romeo's fiancée isn't Miss Serena, but Miss Arabella. "Then this wedding should be called off even more. Romeo wouldn't even accept the highly accomplished Miss Serena he knows, let alone some girl he doesn't know from a small village. Miss Serena is top-notch in both talent and looks, and has been praised by the big shots in the capital. But Miss Arabella..." Romeo's gaze deepened, as if he was thinking about something. Having just finished her shower, Arabella came downstairs when she heard her mom calling for her, without giving it a second thought. Chapter 35. She entered the room dressed in a thin nightgown, her hair bunched up in a ball, instantly catching everyone's attention. Carl's jaw dropped when he saw that the woman was none other than Miss Arabella. Was she the biological daughter the Collins family had just found? Romeo's eyes lifted slightly, a hint of curiosity in his gaze. Was it her? Was she the real daughter of the Collins family? Arabella had just come downstairs when she spotted Romeo on the sofa. His handsome face, eyes gleaming slightly, and a hint of a smile on his lips. How did this man end up in her house? Arabella's eyes showed her confusion. "Mom, did you call me?" "Come, Bella, sit with me." Louisa gently guided her daughter to sit down, saying, "Let me introduce, this is Romeo. Years ago, our family, the Collins, and the Macmillan made a marriage pact. So technically, Romeo is your fiancé." Arabella was totally confused and shocked. "What fiancé? What era is this? There's still such thing as a marriage pact. This is our biological daughter we just found, Arabella Collins," Louisa introduced to Romeo. Romeo's gaze softened slightly. So it was her. He didn't expect she was from the Collins family. Carl also suddenly realized, so Miss Arabella is from the Collins family. No wonder she dared to help save people in the hospital, and dared to kick Susanna on her knees. Turned out she had a powerful background. Serena was eavesdropping from the second floor, initially thinking Romeo came to see her because of his grandpa's matter. She didn't expect he was here for Arabella. Her nails dug deep into her palm, a bit angry. Why did this Arabella have to show up? Why did Arabella have to come back to this family? Why did she have to snatch everything that belonged to her? So Mr. Macmillan is here today. To Arabella looked at the man in front of her, not understanding his purpose. Romeo looked at the girl's bright and clear eyes, smiling. I heard that my fiancée just returned to her family, so I brought a little gift to visit. Carl's eyes widened in disbelief, looking at Romeo. Mr. Macmillan, weren't you here to break off the engagement? How did it turn into a visit? Was it because the person of the marriage pact was Miss Arabella, so you changed your mind? You changed your mind too fast. Although the outside world rumored Romeo to be cold-blooded, cruel, and brutal, Louisa was very pleased with his character after getting to know him over the years. She knew this man was down to earth, capable, and responsible. Regardless of anything else, just looking at his looks, wealth, and ability, he was the best of the best, unmatched by anyone else. If Bella could marry him, her later life would definitely be happy and worry-free. Arabella never imagined that the man in front of her would be her fiancé. Chapter 36. My grandpa wants to see you. Romeo looked at Arabella, his magnetic voice gentle yet bewitching. When are you free so we can go see him together? If you're uneasygoing as my fiancé, you can just show some care on behalf of the Collins family. Romeo added. What a great idea! Kenneth hadn't expected Romeo to be so smart. Yet, you show some affection on behalf of the Collins family. Louisa echoed. Arabella thought, so no one was asking for my opinion. Bella, you should visit Philip tomorrow then. You've been home for 2 days, it's about time. After all, they were the ones who proposed the marriage, and Romeo is quite the catch. That old man was still in the hospital, and it was said that his condition isn't looking good. As a younger generation, she should pay a visit, showing some affection. Yeah, that's right, go pay a visit, Kenneth said with a grin, bring some gifts. No need for gifts, just your presence is enough, Romeo's voice was clear. No, it's our first meeting. We can't skip the courtesy. Kenneth insisted. Leave it to me then, Romeo gently looked at Arabella, we'll arrange the specific time later. Seeing the hopeful looks from her parents, Arabella finally agreed, all right. She'll just check on Philip's recovery. After all, she did accept his blank check a few days ago. Romeo casually said a few words before saying, I won't bother you guys anymore. Are you leaving so soon, Romeo? You've brought so many gifts, this is... Before Louisa could finish her sentence, Romeo said, just a small token, please don't take it to heart. Bella, see Romeo out. Arabella was speechless. Why did she have to see him out? No need, Miss Collins, please stay. Seeing the faint smile on Romeo's lips, Arabella raised an eyebrow. Was he annoyed that she only told him her first name and not her family name? Actually, she had only taken on this family name for 2 days, and she was still getting used to it. Get some rest, my fiancé. Fiancé, when did she agree to that? Kenneth and Louisa were over the moon when they heard him. It seems that Romeo is quite satisfied with Bella. This development is beyond their expectations. Upstairs, Serena couldn't hold back anymore and ran downstairs. In a place where no one could see her, she dashed towards the garden path. Romeo. Seeing Serena rushing over, Carl immediately blocked her way. Miss Serena, what's wrong? Looking at Romeo's retreating figure, Serena was in great agony. Romeo, it was indeed my fault that your grandpa's condition worsened. I feel really guilty. Thank you for not embarrassing me in front of my parents just now. Carl was speechless. Mr. Macmillan just didn't take you seriously. It's not like he was deliberately not embarrassing this Miss Serena. I heard that your grandpa's condition is not good. I want to go see him. When you pick up my sister tomorrow, can you take me with you? No need. There was a hint of coldness in Romeo's eyes. Grandpa wants to see my fiancé. He don't want to see you. Chapter 37. Serena didn't expect him to reject her so directly. Her heart ached, but she clung on to a faint hope. I don't have to go as your fiancé, I could go as a representative of the Collins family. Romeo, can I please apologize to Grandpa? She looked at Romeo hopefully, wishing he'd say yes. But Romeo was icy, his gaze cold. Only my fiancé can represent the Collins family. His gaze was cold, his voice firm. Romeo, Carl. Serena couldn't believe this manservant dared stop her. Before Arabella returned, this guy had been nothing but respectful to her. We don't want to cause a scene, Carl said, before turning to catch up with Romeo. Watching Romeo's retreating figure, Serena shouted, Romeo, believe it or not, I didn't mean to hurt Grandpa. I really didn't. Carl thought, did Miss Serena think Romeo's coldness was because of what happened to Philip? It's clear to everyone, Romeo didn't care about her. But Miss Arabella, Romeo seemed different with her. In the living room, Louisa looked at a pile of gifts. Arabella, these are gifts from Romeo. You guys handle it. Arabella went upstairs. She hadn't expected to gain a fiancé in the process of meeting her family. Things were more complicated than she'd thought. Romeo. In the garden, Serena watched Romeo walk away and started to quietly sob. Martha comforted her, Miss Serena, he's already gone. Martha, what should I do? Serena cried. Romeo treats Arabella differently. The game's just begun. No one knows who will come out on top. Martha patted her back, trying to be rational. Arabella may be pretty, but she grew up poor. She might not be able to keep Romeo's interest. Serena's tears welled up, suddenly feeling there might be some truth to Martha's words. I think, in a few days, Romeo will realize you're the one who's best suited to be his fiancé. After all, Serena had been learning all sorts of skills since she was a kid. She's a typical lady, while Arabella was just a village girl. The Macmillan family was top tier, they only mingled with people of culture. They wouldn't choose someone with only surface beauty. Comforted by Martha, Serena felt a bit better. Arabella had just returned to her room when her phone started buzzing. It was a familiar number, the person had already called her once today. She picked up, hearing the familiar deep voice from the other end. Arabella. Romeo's voice was deep and magnetic. I'm home. Arabella asked automatically, what's up? This question amused Romeo. Did she not realize he was reporting his whereabouts to her? Chapter 38. Romeo chuckled lightly, you still haven't accepted my friend request. Hearing him say this, Arabella suddenly remembered that it was indeed the case, I'll accept it later. She had been so busy today so she had forgotten about it. Romeo's voice was soft, like the plucking of guitar strings. What time should I pick you up tomorrow? 2 in the afternoon. After all, she had other things to handle. Location. Right outside my house. Got it, I'll be there on time. Just as Arabella was about to hang up, Romeo asked, "Don't you like chocolate-flavored cake?" Arabella thought, "What, I noticed you didn't eat a single bite in the car." Arabella didn't expect this man to pay such close attention to her preferences, said, "I don't like chocolate very much." Romeo got it, "Then I'll get you other flavors in the future." Arabella was speechless. "You saved my grandpa, it's only right that I get you some snacks." Arabella said nothing. "I won't disturb your rest anymore," Romeo kindly said. "See you tomorrow, my bride-to-be." Arabella kept silent. "Good night." Romeo thought that Arabella would also say good night, but she simply responded and ended the call. What a unique girl! Just as Arabella was about to rest after hanging up, her phone vibrated again. "I don't care, I need the design draft now, I need to get the factory to work overtime. Such a big order, I must get it." Arabella raised an eyebrow, replied, "Who's the big shot this time?" "Was it her dad again this time? It's a big deal, even bigger than your dad. You could say it's..." "Stop the chit-chat." Arabella had no mood for his rambling. She realized she was out of stock and remembered today's auction. Because of the bidding by bidder number 1, those 6 Hardee's herbs cost her quite a bit. It's time to make some money. "Arabella, I'll start designing now." "Brilliant, boss. Finally getting to work. I'll notify the factory, get them ready." Arabella has a few factories, dedicated to producing her clothing and accessories designs. Even she probably didn't expect that when she looked up from her work, it was already morning. Rubbing her sore wrist, she sent the final design draft. The clock was already pointing at 7:30. "Boss, if you work this hard every day, you'll be the richest person in the world. You'll be richer than Romeo then." Chapter 39. Arabella raised an eyebrow. "Romeo, the richest man on earth? You can't possibly not know that Romeo is the richest guy in the world, right? He's been number 1 for 3 years straight. I heard he's handsome but has a bit of a temper, can be a little scary sometimes." Arabella decided to ignore him and stop listening to his nonsense. She went downstairs to grab breakfast, planning to go back to bed after eating. "Are you there, boss? System notification, your message has been blocked by the recipient." "Why did you block me again?" Serena was up early today, chatting and laughing over breakfast with Martha and Holly. When Arabella walked in, they quickly exchanged glances and stifled their laughter. "Ms. Arabella, your breakfast will be ready soon." The chef noticed Arabella's arrival and started plating the prepared meals with meticulous attention to detail. Meanwhile, Martha and Holly acted as if Arabella didn't exist, not even bothering with a simple greeting. "Bella, why are you up so early?" Serena was the first to speak. She wore a graceful smile. "If you're used to sleeping in, there's no need to change that just because you're here." Arabella ignored her. Her eyes were drawn to the well-prepared breakfast that looked tantalizingly delicious. "Ms. Arabella, I'm Daniel. I prepared your breakfast today. We've got Canadian geoduck congee, milk fish maw, Mexican pancakes, avocado toast, Doric cheese sandwiches, lobster bisque, and handmade coffee and milk. I wasn't sure about your preferences, so I prepared a bit of everything. Enjoy. If there's anything you'd like me to improve, feel free to let me know." "Thank you." Arabella wasn't fussy about food. She just wanted to finish quickly and get back to sleep. However, Serena and Martha exchanged glances before blurting out, "Bella, I heard you're planning to visit Romeo, can I tag along?" Arabella didn't stop eating her cheese sandwich and sipped on her milk. I'm on vacation right now, so I have time. I'm usually too busy to spend time with you. Seeing Arabella's lack of response, Serena continued, You're probably not used to such grandeur, you might be nervous. I know Romeo's personality and temper very well. If you happen to say or do something wrong, having me around can help ease the tension. Although Romeo isn't particularly fond of me, Philip's always happy to see me. I think he'll be friendly towards you too. Of course, our dear Miss Serena is old Mr. Philip's favorite. Holly looked at Arabella haughtily, with Miss Serena around, even if you mess up, Mr. Philip will let it slide because of her. Martha, thinking her plan was working, whispered to Serena, I'll go prepare the outfit you'll wear today. I'm riding in Romeo's car. If you want to ride, go ask him, Arabella suddenly said, telling me one to help. Bella, you don't agree. That's right. Serena looked awkward, surprised by Arabella's direct rejection. After seeing Arabella finish her breakfast leisurely and leave, Holly was a bit upset. She's only known Romeo for a few days and she's already using his name to threaten you. She's so full of herself. Does she really think she's Romeo's girlfriend? Serena clenched her teeth. Romeo didn't want to bring her last night, and now Arabella didn't agree. This country bumpkin was just afraid of her stealing the spotlight, wasn't she? Ms. Serena, don't worry. Let her mess up and make Philip unhappy. Then you can visit Philip. When he compares the two of you, he'll realize you're the ideal daughter-in-law. Chapter 40. Serena twigged it right away. If there was no comparison, no one would know how bad Arabella was and how great she was. Martha was right. Let this country bumpkin have a taste of reality. She needed to know that Philip was always the leader, and would never respect such narrow-minded people. Don't bother me for lunch. Arabella ordered the servant who was working on her way upstairs, locked herself in her room, and hit the hay. She was really tired because she stayed up all night writing, and fell asleep as soon as she lay down on her pillow. When Kenneth and Louisa woke up and heard their darling daughter was skipping lunch, they immediately summoned the chef. Did breakfast not sit well with Bella? Daniel felt wronged. Ms. Bennet left because of what Serena said, not because of the breakfast. Serena, Kenneth and Louisa were taken aback, then hastily asked, What did Serena say? Serena didn't really say anything, just wanted Ms. Bennet to take her to see Philip, but Ms. Bennet didn't agree. Kenneth and Louisa exchanged glances and immediately said, Go fetch Serena. When Serena was summoned, she didn't expect Arabella would tattle to her parents over such a small matter. She was already a grown woman but acted like a child refusing to eat. Serena was instantly ticked off. But she tried to put on a pitiful face on the outside, pretending to be wronged. Mom, Dad, I didn't say anything excessive to my sister. Just asked her if she could take me with her. Philip missed me and has been texting me to visit him. I couldn't go because of exams. Serena saw their dubious faces and immediately took out her phone to show the chat history. I also had free time only today, so I thought we could go together. Louisa didn't expect the truth to be this. It seemed they read too much into it. How could Serena compete with Bella for her fiancé? They made a mistake. Arabella had no idea what happened in the morning. When she woke up, the clock was already pointing to 1 in the afternoon. She simply washed and changed her clothes, and as soon as she opened the door, she heard a noise downstairs. Romeo, you brought so many gifts for Bella last night, and today you brought us these gifts. Thank you so much, but no need for those gifts next time. We're all family, no need for gifts. You even prepared gifts for Bella to meet your grandfather. We can't possibly accept this. We've had the gifts prepared, and we can't cost you money this time. Arabella was puzzled when she heard this. Romeo was here, didn't he? They agree to meet at the front door. How did he get in? No worries, Bella is my fiancée, I should prepare her meeting gifts. Romeo just finished speaking when he noticed Arabella descending the stairs. Her long and thin legs, dressed in casual clothes, probably didn't he get enough sleep, her beautiful eyes showing a hint of impatience. She was kind of cute like this. Bella, are you awake? You must be hungry at this time, right? Kenneth and Louisa hurriedly asked. Have something to eat before you go, the food is ready. I'm not hungry. Arabella just wanted to rush to the hospital to complete the necessary procedures, then come back to deal with work. Tomorrow was Monday, she had to go to the company her father gave her. She didn't have much time for personal matters. But Louisa was worried she might be hungry. The food in the kitchen is ready. You can try to eat a bit, since Romeo's here, you can eat together. Right, Romeo usually eats at the company, maybe he didn't get enough, you two can eat together. In this way, the two of them had something to eat before they left. On the other side, Philip was constantly checking himself in the mirror. Brody, see if my hair is messy, if my clothes are neat. Chapter 41. When Philip heard that he was meeting his grandson's fiancée today, he was beside himself with excitement. The butler was a bit helpless. Sir, you've checked yourself in the mirror a bazillion times. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you were getting ready to see your own wife. You shut up. Philip put away the mirror and hurried him. Go check if they've arrived yet. I already told Carl, they'll text me when they're on their way. Just as the butler finished speaking, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Carl. They were about to set off, they would be at the hospital in 10 minutes. Hurry up, go greet them. Philip was beyond excited, urging the butler, what are you standing there for, get a move on. Inside the luxurious car, Arabella was a little sleepy, and as the car jostled along, she gradually closed her eyes. Sir, up ahead is. Before Carl could finish speaking, he heard Romeo whisper, hush. Carl looked in the rearview mirror and realized that Miss Arabella had fallen asleep. When the car slowly came to a stop, Arabella's head tilted to one side, and Romeo gently caught her face. Her face was soft and smooth, like that of a well-behaved child. Even without makeup, she was indescribably beautiful. She was flawless. Romeo's gaze traced her features. He moved closer to her, offering his shoulder for her to sleep more comfortably. Carl's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Wasn't he the boss, a clean freak? He was actually getting close to a woman. This was simply unthinkable. The butler waiting outside the car was so shocked. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he was seeing things. Romeo was really offering his shoulder to a girl, looking at her with a doting gaze he had never seen before. Did the boss have feelings for this girl? Who was this girl? Arabella didn't know how long she had slept. When she opened her eyes, she found herself sleeping on Romeo's shoulder. The car was already parked in the hospital garage. Did I fall asleep? She looked at the clock in the car and realized she had been leaning on his shoulder for so long. Sorry, why didn't you wake me up? Did you sleep late last night? Romeo's tone was not the least bit reproachful, but rather gentle. I wanted to let you sleep a bit more. Since Miss Arabella is awake, sir, you can go ahead, I'll catch up with the gifts. All right. Just as Carl was about to fetch the gifts, he heard Arabella say, I've prepared the gifts. He was stunned, and like Romeo, surprised. However, he couldn't help but scrutinize Arabella. She didn't even have a bag. "Where's the gift, sir? Are you really not going to take the gifts you prepared?" Carl was a bit puzzled. "Listen to Arabella." Romeo stood by Arabella's side, the two of them walking side by side down the street, their stunning appearances attracting countless stares. In the ward. Chapter 42. Philip had been waiting a long time, and finally saw two people entering. "Grandpa, Bella and I are here to visit you," said Romeo. But Philip's gaze didn't linger on his grandson, but was completely focused on the young girl. "So, you're the brave girl who saved me twice." Philip didn't expect this girl to be so beautiful. He was at death's door the last 2 times and didn't get a good look at her. He had no idea how stunning she was. He could only say that Romeo was really lucky to have such a beautiful wife-to-be. "Hello, Mr. Philip." Arabella greeted politely as soon as she walked in. She was so refined. "Don't call me Mr. Philip, it sounds so distant. We're family, just call me Grandpa." Philip was very pleased with her and said happily, "You're my grandson's fiancé, naturally, you can call me Grandpa just like he does." Arabella choked. She and Romeo just met by chance, they weren't anywhere near the stage of being engaged. "I heard from Carl that you're a lost relative of the Collins family who was about to return to the Collins family and saved me at the same time. Yesterday, I had that soup and was rushed into surgery, and you pulled me back from the brink of death again. That's twice you've saved me. What a strange twist of fate this is. If it weren't for this girl, he would have been long gone. Would he have had a chance to meet his future granddaughter-in-law? And you've been stranded for 18 years, you must have had a rough time." Arabella was about to say that she was okay and not suffering when she heard him continue, "The Collins family and the Macmillan family will treat you better in the future." Arabella understood why the Collins family would be concerned about he, but would the Macmillan family be caring too much? "Your name is Arabella, right? Nice name, and you're very pretty." Philip seemed to be talking to Brody. Brody nodded in agreement with a smile. This girl was indeed more appealing than Serena, very natural and unique. "Ah, I've been talking non-stop and forgot to offer you a seat. Come sit, kiddo." Philip patted the double sofa by his bed. Romeo's eyes sparkled. Was this sofa new bought just so that he and Arabella could sit together? They really went all out. Brody awkwardly laughed. "Young master, sit down, please." Romeo didn't show any displeasure and naturally sat next to Arabella. This surprised Philip. His grandson seemed to feel differently about this girl. "Bella, Carl told me you just finished high school. Have you thought about going to college? I can help arrange that." Arabella obediently replied, "Not at the moment." "Well, how about Summerfield College? I know the principal." Romeo tried to change the subject. "Have you taken your medication today?" As soon as the topic of medication came up, Philip's brows furrowed. "That medicine is so disgusting. I don't know who made it, it's so bitter it could make me suffocate." Everyone turned to look at Arabella. Arabella calmly said, "I made it." Philip looked shocked. He never expected his granddaughter-in-law not only to be able to diagnose and perform surgery but also to make medicine. He immediately changed his tune. "Even though it's a bit bitter at first, medicine is supposed to be bitter to be beneficial. After taking the medicine, you can have a sweet, and it'll taste very sweet. That sweetness is just like the care my granddaughter-in-law has for me. Then you should take it," Romeo added calmly. Philip said, "Brody, bring me the medicine. I was planning on taking it anyway, I just forgot because I was so pleased to see my granddaughter-in-law." "What a storyteller! Chapter 43. Brody didn't even want to expose it. Just a moment ago, before Miss Arabella arrived, Philip was commenting on how the medicine was so awful it made him want to puke. Now, how did things change? The medicine my granddaughter-in-law gave me, I could take lots of it. Arabella was speechless. No need to take so much medicine, actually. Brody put the medicine in front of Philip, and Philip ate it all. He was really bold and hearty in doing so. Delicious. Carl saw Philip's brows furrowed. Brody knew the taste of the medicine was indescribable, but there was no choice, the one who made the medicine was right here. And this medicine was good for the health. How are you feeling today? Arabella asked. I'm very happy that you and Romeo came to visit me, all my aches and pains have disappeared. Philip just finished speaking, suddenly clutched his chest, his expression somewhat uncomfortable. Arabella had no chance to treat him before he bent down and vomited a mouthful of blood. Everyone was shocked. Grandpa! Mr. Philip, are you okay? What's going on? Wait, I'll go get a doctor. Miss Arabella is a doctor. Miss Arabella, please check on Mr. Philip, what's wrong with him? Arabella immediately diagnosed him. She seemed to have discovered something, asking, have you been drinking? Romeo and Carl looked at Philip in disbelief. No. I didn't drink. Philip knew he couldn't hide it anymore, so he admitted, I just had a little bit. Arabella asked, a bottle of wine. How did you know? Philip looked at her in astonishment. How did she know? Was she not a doctor, but a fairy? Arabella smiled, the bottle of wine is empty. Philip turned around and saw the bottle of wine hidden in the blanket had somehow been exposed. He quickly glared at Brody, blaming him, didn't I tell you to hide it well? I didn't expect it to be found out. Philip and Miss Arabella suddenly arrived, he didn't have time to hide it. Grandpa! Romeo said seriously. Knowing his grandson was going to lecture him again. Philip quickly waved his hand, all right, I know, I just have a sweet tooth. I was happy when my granddaughter-in-law came. Today, with my granddaughter-in-law here, she can vouch for me, I want to do it again next time. Romeo coldly said, can we trust your words? Yes. Why not? Philip hurriedly said, if you don't believe me, have my granddaughter-in-law come over every day to check on me. See if I've been drinking. Romeo turned to Arabella, I think it's necessary to prepare some more medicine for Grandpa to take. No. The medicine just now was more bitter than his life. Giving him more medicine, he would die on the spot. Is your taste too heavy? Romeo deliberately said, didn't you say you could take lots of your granddaughter-in-law's medicine? Chapter 44. You! This naughty boy, deliberately let him into trouble. Arabella, standing by, briefly glanced over and said with a smile, no more meds needed, but you can't drink any more. All right. Philip nodded in agreement, Arabella's right. Brody, who was also standing by, nodded repeatedly, Ms. Arabella, I will definitely take good care of Philip from now on. Arabella, slightly helpless, corrected him gently, just call me Arabella. Romeo, smiling, changed the subject, if you hadn't teamed up with Grandpa, how could he have gotten drunk? I promise I'll never make that mistake again. Right. Philip suddenly remembered something, pulled out a delicate little wooden box, opened it to reveal a gorgeous crown necklace. This was one of the favorite pieces of jewelry of Romeo's grandmother. She said that if one day Romeo brings a girl home, this must be given to her. The crown on the necklace was made up of 999 top-grade diamonds, looking extremely magnificent. Arabella knew this necklace had made headlines worldwide back in its day, because it was made of top-grade diamonds and designed by a top-notch designer. Back in that era, such a necklace cost 300 million. Now, the value of this necklace had gone up even more. Such a precious gift, I can't accept. Arabella was refusing, when she heard Philip say, "This is the greeting gift from Romeo's grandmother to her future daughter-in-law, you must accept. If she was here, she'd surely put it on you herself." Mentioning his wife, Philip suddenly seemed a bit sorrowful. Arabella noticed he looked quite sad, and couldn't help but turn to look at Romeo. Romeo explained lightly, "A few years ago, Grandma had a car accident and has been in a coma since. Though she was alive, it was no different from being dead. Couldn't move, couldn't speak, had no sense of pain. Even though they had invited many famous doctors, none could cure Grandma's condition." "Romeo, you put it on Arabella." Hearing this, Arabella felt a little moved. "All right, Philip, let us not talk about this today since Miss Arabella is here." Brody feared that the old man would be too sad and his condition would worsen. "Yes, Arabella's here, let us not talk about this." Philip managed another smile. "Come, let me put it on for you." Romeo took out the necklace and leaned closer to Arabella. Arabella could smell the faint fragrance on him. She wanted to refuse, but seeing the old man's expectant eyes and remembering his words just now, she couldn't bring herself to reject him. "You look great." Romeo looked at Arabella's face. Her features were delicate, her eyes bright, and the gorgeous crown hung on her slender white neck, as if it was tailor-made for her. "It suits you." Romeo raised his eyebrows, his eyes as gentle as water. "If only your grandma could see all this." Arabella replied, "If things remain stable, then it can be done in 3 more days." Chapter 45. "Can you come pick me up? We can go visit your grandma together." Arabella thought for a moment. "All right." Arabella felt that it was about time to pay her grandma a visit, maybe she could lend a hand. Philip's mood brightened when he heard Arabella had agreed. They talked for a long time. Then as they were leaving, Arabella pulled a delicate little bottle out of her pocket. "Grandpa, this is for you." Philip hadn't expected a gift, he accepted it with joy and asked expectantly, "What is it?" "It's a sweet pill, take one a month, for 6 months straight. It can guarantee your health, live to 100 years old." "Ha ha, really that must be expensive, Arabella, where did you find such a treasure?" Philip hadn't expected his granddaughter-in-law to be so thoughtful. He had everything he needed, except his health. What he wanted most now was longevity. Unexpectedly, Bella was so thoughtful, knowing what mattered to him the most. "Can I eat one now?" Philip couldn't wait. He popped open the bottle and tried to pour out one pill. He got too excited and poured out a few. Carl glanced at the design on the pills, nearly dropping his glasses in shock. "Weren't these the highly sought-after time-defying potion from the auction? It was said to be a health tonic, prolonging life. Only one was auctioned every 3 to 5 months. Each one cost $500,000. The question was, how did Miss Arabella come by so many of these precious, rare things? Looking at the quantity, she'd have to have been buying them for 10 years straight. But, Arabella didn't need these at her age. Why would she spend so much on something she didn't need and keep them on her all the time unless she made these pills herself so she could have as many as she wanted whenever she wanted? When he realized this possibility, Carl looked at Romeo in disbelief. Romeo also seemed to know where the pills came from, his expression deepening. It seemed that the little lady might be the famous Ms. Arya, the medicine genius. She might have made the hot drugs at auction in the past. This also explained why she was near the church by the auction that day. Because she'd gone to the auction that day too. Thinking of this, Romeo smiled. He hadn't expected Arabella to have so many alter egos, one after another. It was a surprise. "Philip, you're in luck." Carl couldn't help but say. "It's true." Philip tasted one. "It's sweet, I'm really lucky. My granddaughter-in-law gave me so many, they're really tasty." "Bella, is it a problem if I eat a lot? Can I have one every day?" Carl: "No." Romeo: "Nope." Philip looked at them both, puzzled. Why not? Carl seemed to have something to say but stopped himself. Such an expensive sweet, one a day, that was quite a luxury. Romeo added, "Bella once said, you can only have one a month." "All right then." Chapter 46. Just at that moment, Arabella's phone buzzed. It was Cadden who was calling. "Sorry, I gotta take this call." Arabella got up and walked out of the ward. "Arabella, I heard you're in the hospital." Cadden's voice came through the phone. "Anything up?" replied Arabella casually. "Grace woke up for a bit today," whispered Cadden, "only for a few minutes, but during those minutes, she was muttering your name. She wanted to call you, but I stopped her. You know how her condition is, any excitement could cause trouble, so I had to stop her." Grace was most concerned about Arabella, and the first thing she did after waking up was to check on Arabella. Even if Arabella didn't mention what Atli and Olga had been up to behind her back, just hearing Arabella's voice would make Grace cry. If she got too excited, she could lose her life, and all the previous treatment would be for naught. "Are you still at the hospital? Why don't you come and see her? Check out the medical report from today, too." "All right. I just finished a meeting, I'll bring the report to find you." "Okay." After hanging up, Arabella headed towards Grace's ward. Grace was still unconscious, but her hand was tightly clutching a bracelet, the first thing Arabella bought for her with her own money. Arabella gently held her frail hand. The person on the bed seemed to sense her arrival, her fingers moved slightly. Just then, the ward door was pushed open. The arriving Olga saw Arabella, first stunned, then angrily said, "What are you doing here again? Who let you in? Are you hanging around here every day, waiting for the old lady to wake up and take you back to the Murphy family? Dream on." Atli saw Arabella, a complex look in his eyes. He didn't expect this kid to be so persistent, sneaking into the hospital every day when they were hot around, just to stay in Summerfield. "It's unnecessary. She's not a real child of Murphy family. Atli, I bet she's using our daughter's name to get in and out of the ward freely. You have to tell the nurse, she has no blood ties with our family. Our daughter is Yoli. They can't let her in when they see her." Atli had the same suspicion, otherwise why would she be able to come and go freely here? She must have told the nurse she's a Murphy, Grace's own granddaughter. Seeing Arabella show no signs of leaving, Olga couldn't help but yell, "What are you still doing here? Get out! Do I have to kick you out?" "The patient needs quiet." Arabella stood up calmly, she wasn't planning to stay long anyways. The old lady was about to wake up, her presence would only upset the old lady's condition. Watching Arabella's retreating figure, Olga got angrier. She happened to bring a bag today. She clutched the handle and suddenly hurled it at Arabella's back. Just in that instant, Arabella was pulled back by a hand, and the bag landed on the floor. Olga saw who it was and both she and Atli were very shocked. "It's Dr. Cadden." So that's how you treat the person who saved your mother's life. Caden's handsome face was filled with coldness, even his eyes were very icy. Chapter 47. Lifesaver. Olga and Atli were taken aback, both turning to look at Arabella. Her. What's so special about her? If it weren't for her, there'd probably be a lot of dead bodies in the hospital by now. Caden couldn't take the family's attitude anymore and retorted angrily. Do you think Grace would be in this kind of ward without her? Do you think she'd get special care? Do you think she could be cheated death so many times? Her. Olga and Atli were at a loss. What could Arabella possibly have done? Didn't the old lady get to stay in the VIP ward because of the Panther family? What did Arabella have to do with anything? Room 306. Philip was beyond pleased, a grin plastered on his face as he lavished praise on his granddaughter-in-law. Boy, you've really hit the jackpot with this one. You better cherish her, and if you dare mistreat her, I'll be the first to object. I know, Romeo replied tersely. He wasn't much of a talker unless Arabella was involved. With such a beautiful, young, and medically knowledgeable wife, wouldn't there be lots of men chasing after her? Philip suddenly asked Brody. Do you think my grandson looks a bit old? Carl almost burst out laughing. Old Mr. Macmillan was only 22. They're a match made in heaven. But, speaking of Arabella, why hasn't she come back yet? Brody checked his watch. You don't think she's run into trouble, do you? Upon hearing this, Philip immediately said, Romeo, go check on her. As Romeo left the room, he saw a male doctor shielding Arabella, like a father protecting his child. Isn't that the doctor who helped Miss Arabella the other day? Carl, with his sharp eyes, recognized him right away. That's James Newton's grandson. Caden. What's happening? Do you think Miss Arabella is in trouble? Is Dr. Caden helping her out? A feeling Romeo had never before experienced welled up inside him, a bitter, displeased feeling. It was as if the person he was supposed to protect was being protected by someone else. It seems like Dr. Caden and Miss Arabella have known each other for a while. He seems to really care about her, Carl observed. Then, sensing the palpable tension emanating from Romeo, he teased, Mr. Macmillan, you're not jealous, are you? Romeo replied coldly, he's just a doctor. Mr. Macmillan, Dr. Caden, and Miss Arabella are both in the medical field. They have common ground, if... Before Carl could finish his sentence, Romeo started walking in their direction. Didn't Mr. Macmillan say he wasn't jealous? Forget it. Arabella didn't want to waste any more time and started to leave. Caden was indignant on her behalf. You really should tell them who is responsible for Grace being alive today. There's nothing to say. Arabella left first, and an irritated Caden followed closely behind. What did Dr. Caden mean? Our mother is alive today because of our family and the Panther family, not Arabella, right? Olga was utterly perplexed. As she watched them leave, she couldn't help but say, she didn't pay nor contribute. What power does she have to bring an old woman back from the brink of death? This is absolutely ridiculous. Many doctors were at their wits' end, but we paid for it. The Panther family provided Grace with a VIP hospital room, so that she is still alive. Chapter 48. Let it go. Atli didn't want to stir up a fuss. Being the richest dude in Tranquil City, he needed to keep a good public image and not cause a scene. But Olga speculated, did Dr. Caden step up for Arabella because he's got a thing for her? I found it odd. His attitude towards us was so bad before, probably because of Arabella. Stop it. Let us go in and see Mother. I don't know when Mom will wake up. I've already arranged for the will. Once she signs it, leaving her assets to us and Yoli, I can breathe easy. Keep your voice down. Atlee glared back at her. What, are you hoping everyone hears? Olga quickly clamped her mouth shut and closed the door to the hospital room. Arabella had no idea why they were visiting. She turned to Kaden and said, I've got things to do. You can take off. What about Grace's medical report? If there are no special circumstances, you can read for yourself. Okay. Kaden noticed a man waiting in front of them with short clean hair, tall figure, exuding an aristocratic aura. Was that guy Romeo? Ever since he saved Philip, Bella seemed to get along well with this guy. Romeo barely glanced at Kaden and focused on Arabella. He asked her in a soft voice, Is there any trouble? Nope. If there's anything, just let me know. I'll help you out. Arabella looked up at Romeo's serious expression and said lightly, It's nothing, just ran into two people. I'm going to see Grandpa. Okay. Romeo's gaze followed her into the room, then turned to Kaden not far away. Kaden wasn't sure if he should greet him. Even his grandpa was respectful towards this man. Just as he was hesitating, Romeo withdrew his gaze and followed Arabella into the room. Bella, you didn't run into any trouble, did you? Philip asked with concern when he saw his granddaughter. None. If there's anything, tell Romeo. He'll help you out. If you're not satisfied with his handling, you can come to me. I'll back you up. Arabella looked at him and said, Okay. Before leaving, Philip was reluctant to let go, reminding her over and over, Bella, don't forget our agreement. I'm getting discharged the day after tomorrow, you must come. I will. After leaving the hospital, Arabella asked about the condition of Romeo's grandmother. She sustained a brain injury. Romeo replied solemnly, Apart from being able to breathe and blink on her own, her other symptoms are similar to those of a vegetative state. In simple terms, she was like a living plant. Arabella understood. She recalled a similar case she treated a long time ago. The patient had turned into a vegetable due to a brain injury. Although the condition was finally controlled, it required a lot of medication. Some of the drugs were hard to find, and some even required sourcing from illegal areas beyond the border. All in all, treating such patients was a big hassle and tough task. How about we have dinner together tonight? Arabella checked the time, thinking that her parents were waiting for her at home. At this point, Romeo took out his phone and dialed a number. Hello, it's me. Bella and I are having dinner out tonight. Okay, I'll take good care of her. Hearing his brief conversation and him hanging up, Arabella thought, did he even ask for my opinion? Chapter 49. What do you fancy eating? Romeo opened the car door and waited for her to get in. Arabella remained silent. French cuisine, perhaps, or you want to eat some other type of food? Whatever. Arabella strutted into the car, no longer fussing over this matter. Romeo got in the car, saw her reaching to take off that necklace, and instinctively grabbed her hand. Arabella was a bit stunned, then explained, I feel like I shouldn't have this. No one's more deserving of it than you. Romeo looked into her eyes, speaking word by word, I know you're young and haven't thought about marriage yet, but that's okay, no rush. Arabella just felt this precious item around her neck was too conspicuous. Everyone who knew what this necklace represented understood what it meant. This was something only the Macmillan family's daughter-in-law could wear. Seeing that she still wanted to take it off, Romeo pressed on, could you consider my grandpa's delicate heart and keep it on for now? He'd be heartbroken if he saw you without it when he gets discharged in a few days. Arabella was convinced by this argument. Her hand had just left the necklace when he took it. Romeo held her hand tenderly, it was so soft that he suddenly didn't want to let go. Arabella couldn't pull her hand back, so she simply said, "Let go." Romeo held her hand with no sign of letting go, instead he calmly looked ahead. "Let me hold it for a moment." "What's with this attitude? How well do you know Cat and Romeo?" suddenly asked. Carl, the driver, hadn't expected Mr. Macmillan's relationship with Miss Arabella to progress this quickly. He was so excited his hands were trembling on the wheel. If only there were some bumpy spots on the road tonight, like last time, so Miss Arabella could end up in Mr. Macmillan's arms. Arabella casually said, "We've interacted a few times." That brat didn't believe in her medical skills at first, but after she schooled him a few times, he wisely gave in. "Do you prefer those who studied medicine or those who didn't?" Arabella thought, what Carl thought, whoa. "Mr. Macmillan, you said you weren't jealous, so why would you ask that? What are you talking about?" Arabella didn't get his point, but seeing the concern in his eyes, she quickly understood. Isn't someone who studied medicine better than someone who didn't? We can exchange ideas and learn from each other in our free time. Romeo instinctively squeezed her hand, sounding a bit jealous. "You guys talk about medicine all the time, doesn't it get tiring?" "No way, we're discussing topics we're interested in. And through our exchange, we both make progress." Seeing Arabella raise an eyebrow, Romeo couldn't help but crack a small smile. He knew Arabella was teasing him. He knew she was doing it on purpose, but in his heart, it felt like knocking over a bottle of syrup, sweetness spreading everywhere. "Mr. Macmillan, we're almost at La Belleville," Carl announced while driving, then he couldn't help but glance in the rear-view mirror. "Miss Arabella, this is Mr. Macmillan's favorite restaurant. He's never brought any girl here before." Arabella was intrigued hearing this, "So he's taken girls to places he doesn't like?" No, that's not what I meant." Before Carl's car came to a halt, the restaurant manager spotted them. In the blink of an eye, the manager rushed out to greet them. "Mr. Macmillan, long time no see, who might this be?" Chapter 50. The restaurant manager took a glance at the lady beside Romeo, their hands clasped together. Surely, she must be Romeo's girlfriend. He promptly bowed politely towards her. "Miss, right this way. I'm not his girlfriend." Seeing their hands intertwined, the manager quickly laughed it off. "No worries, you'll be soon enough. Mr. Romeo has never brought a lady here before, you're the first. Is there any food you can't eat?" "None, but please address me as Arabella." "Even if you asked me to, I wouldn't dare to call you in such an intimate way," the manager said with a laugh, then spoke into his walkie-talkie. "Hurry, clear the place. ASAP." Arabella glanced at Romeo, seemingly asking, "Is a meal this serious? This is our first date." Romeo led her into the restaurant, hand in hand. On the other side, Yolanda, holding on to Zachary's arm, excitedly said, "Zachary, this restaurant is so pricey, yet you brought me here. You're so nice." Zachary looked at her tenderly. "You're my fiancé, of course I have to treat you well." As they reached the restaurant entrance, the greeter apologized while bowing. "I'm sorry, but the restaurant has been booked for the day." "Booked? I wasn't informed." Zachary frowned, looking somewhat displeased. Yolanda gasped at the mention of a private event. She knew this place was costly, even a simple fruit would cost more than 200. Even if you had the money, you couldn't necessarily get a seat. People like Zachary had to book half a month in advance. And that was only for a seat in the main hall. The top-tier private rooms were completely out of reach. Who could have booked the entire restaurant today? Too lavish. All right then. Just as Zachary was about to leave, Yolanda spotted a familiar figure heading towards the VIP elevator. That's the elevator to the top-tier private rooms. Isn't that Arabella? She wouldn't mistake that silhouette. Yolanda pointed at the girl inside. Why is she allowed in? Who are you referring to? The greeter turned around, saw no one, then gently explained, the only people allowed here are tonight's guests and the restaurant staff. Yoli, who did you see? Zachary asked curiously. I think I saw my sister, Yolanda whispered into Zachary's ear. Are you sure you didn't get it wrong? The people who could enter here were all rich or nobility. With Arabella's spending power, she obviously didn't fit in. Moreover, the restaurant was booked. How could she get in? Maybe my sister is trying to find a job here to stay in Summerfield. Yolanda feigned a sigh. Zachary, could you help my sister find a job? I'm worried that the rich people here might have ill intentions towards her. She used to be very dignified. If she has to lower herself to stay in Summerfield, her life is none of our business anymore. Zachary, holding Yolanda's hand, said, let us go eat at the restaurant across the street, okay? In order to better observe Arabella's predicament, Yolanda deliberately chose a window-side table so that she could clearly see when Arabella got off work from La Belleville. Sir, madam, please have a seat. In this spacious and luxurious private room, one could see the outside scenery. It's an upscale restaurant at the top of a hill with a ceiling that opened up to give a real view of the night sky.